Good morning, Ohio. James Ernest of the Growing Truth here with Dr. Tom Prichard of JPWA. Dr. Tom, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, we're excited about learning about your career and learning about JPWA. So some of our listeners that are interested in becoming professional wrestlers can sign up with y'all. What sports did you play growing up?
I played football in high school, but my main sport was wrestling. You didn't have amateur wrestling in the area I was at in Houston, Texas. I don't even know if, I don't believe Texas, or at least Houston, wasn't a huge amateur wrestling outlet, I guess, or hotbed, if you would, because if it was, I probably would have tried to do that, but at least in the school I went to, it wasn't offered. I know what the boys' club and things like that, they had a wrestling team, but it wasn't close enough where I could walk, and so my mom was going to take me, so I had to play football. And I wrestled as much. I did judo and karate too, starting when I was 10, and I got my black belt at 18, and during that time, I was also working in the Houston wrestling office in downtown Houston, 1919 Carolina, at the corner of Pierce, for Paul Bosch during the summers. And doing karate, playing football. And when I got 18, got my black belt, I taught karate for a little bit, worked in the office during the day, go to wrestling Friday nights. And that's pretty much what I did. Had a pretty busy life, if you would say.
So when did you first get hooked on professional wrestling?
From the first time I can remember seeing it at 4 years old. It was just something, the business has completely changed from that day, obviously. Pardon me. But it was something about it. It was just this studio wrestling atmosphere, and it was guys like Dory and Terry Funk, a couple of tag teams called the Von Brauners, with Gentleman Saul Weingroff as their manager. It was a couple of big German guys who would goose step and have iron crosses and swastikas on their tights and boots, and this was in the 1960s, so 20 years after World War II had ended. It was still, they had the foreign heels, and these guys were brutal. They looked the part, and everything they did was solid. And you had the Infernos with J.C. Dykes, a couple of masked guys who, one had a loaded boot that was built up like an inch bigger than his other boot, and he would tap the toe, load it, and kick the guy in the head, and a huge amount of blood would come rushing down his face, and everybody but the referee could see what was going on. So those made an impression on me. Those kind of guys just captivated me, and as a kid, from the first time I saw it, I saw the ring, I saw the characters, I saw listened to the promos, the interviews they cut, and it just intrigued me. And I from the first time I said it and saw it, I told everybody I wanted to be a wrestler, and they all laughed and said, "You're too small. You can't be a wrestler." And as I got older, they kept telling me I was too small and you could never do it. So it's just something that pretty much intrigued me, captured my imagination, and people told me all my life, this is not real, it's fake. But I was watching guys like Terry Funk and Johnny Valentine and Wahoo McDaniel, Jose Lothario, the Great Malenko, the Great Mephisto, and guys who, when they went in the ring, they convinced the people who were live, and I was fortunate enough to go live every Friday night from the time I was 10 years old on, and you could see the sweat fly, you could see the lumps and the bruises and the black eyes. I mean, because the guys in Texas, where I grew up at, first El Paso and then Houston, they approached the business from a standpoint of, we're going to convince everybody out there what we're doing is legit. And that was the mindset the majority of those guys had back then. So that just it mesmerized me. I would hear the announcers, the commentators talk about going to foreign lands like Japan and Australia, and I thought, that's what I want to do.
I agree with you. I mean, it is just one of those amazing things, professional wrestling. It allows you to just get so involved and so captivated by it. Unfortunately, nowadays it's not the same as it once was, but there's some good organizations still, but some of them, it baffles you the different direction that they've gone in.
Well, once again, the culture's changed. The business has changed. We didn't have cable TV back then either. We had 3 channels, maybe 4, if you had a UHF station, and you had territories. You had one wrestling company in the town, and you didn't get to see outside wrestlers. So if this guy in Texas says he's the world champion, and you didn't know anything else, well, that was pretty much the only thing you knew. So it technology, the world, civilization, people, everything's changed. And when it came out, wrestling has always been out there. Wrestling always had its detractors and critiques and things like this, and it's been exposed years before Vince ever said anything about it. I mean, the Fall Guys and other people, Jack Pfeffer, through the history of wrestling, have come out to the newspapers and expose. So that was nothing new. The thing that really changed, I believe, was the attitude and the premise in which everyone approached it from. And Steve Austin, when he was hot, he grew up on Texas wrestling too. And everyone, it had already been told, Vince had already said, we're not going to insult anyone's intelligence. We want everyone to know this is sports entertainment. And what's actually happening in the ring is not what you think it is. And we're all magicians. Well, when Stone Cold came out, the crowd popped for some reason. Whatever connection Steve Austin made, he didn't wrestle like a lot of people do today. He approached it from the premise of, I'm going out and kick somebody's butt. I'm going to kick some ass. And he did. And nowadays, everybody wants to go out, and not everybody, but some want to go out and just do a choreographed tumbling routine. And you need sizzle, you need high flyers. And I make no bones about it. I don't want to sit here and just say, these kids today, get off my lawn. Anything like that. Not at all. But there has to be some kind of rhyme and reason. There has to be a foundation. There has to be a story. And when you go out and just do things for the sake of doing them, and nobody sells, nobody registers, you just go and do moves, well, that's when it becomes watching somebody just doing moves. And what got guys like The Rock, Austin, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Mankind, Undertaker, Kane, whoever you want to say, those guys not only could do the moves, they looked the part, and they knew where to put their moves. It didn't look like a rehearsed Circus Soleil match. So that to me was a huge shift in the business when everybody came out and said, it's okay to give 20 super kicks in a row and not sell. It's okay to go out there and make a mockery of this and not we don't try to insult anybody's intelligence, but we don't go out there and try and just run it in their face, fly it in their face, and say, hey, this is just complete BS. Why should you even care about it? And so anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on why why we're in the position we're in today, because so many people got smart. Anybody can buy a ring. Anybody can rent a building or set up a ring out in their backyard and do whatever they want to do and play wrestler. And back then, you had the people who still did that stuff, but they were pretty much contained. And now, with the world being the way it is, it's everybody who wants to, and anybody who wanted to do this can do it. They can buy their own ring, run their own show, and be a professional, wrestler.
I know what you mean. I kind of feel that MLW is the closest to the throwback, the traditional wrestling. Have you watched any of their stuff?
I've watched MLW before. I did a little bit of stuff with them before. And when tried to be an agent, it's just not my forte. It's not my thing. I'm not cut from that cloth. But I did see their talent, and they do have a good setup, and they do have a great crew of guys who are working for the common attitude of let's go out and actually do professional wrestling the way we know it and the way we know how to do it. That's another thing. Not everyone understands how to do it and why the old school or why the basics and fundamentals are so important. But these guys do, and Court Bauer and his group of guys believe in the presentation should be more sports oriented, I guess, and more along the lines of having guys that understand how to work. And this day and age, in order to understand that, you have to talk to somebody who knows how to work as well, or who has been there, and not everybody is as receptive as you would hope. But they do. I think MLW does have a pretty good product.
Going back to the beginning, where you started, the way I understand it, you started the same way Cornette did, taking photos.
Yes. Pardon me. I have this frog in my throat right now. Anyway.
It happens.
Yeah. Yes. You know, I was looking for any way to get a foot in the door, and we grew up in El Paso. I was born in El Paso, Texas, and my dad got a better job when I was 10 years old. We moved to Houston and found Houston wrestling. And, you know, whereas we watched the show on TV from a studio in West Texas, now it's coming from the Sam Houston Coliseum with a man named Paul Bosch. And it was on a UHF station, which meant you had to go to the not the regular channels on TV, but you had to dial it in, use an antenna. It was hazy and static, all this stuff. But anyway, I would get the wrestling magazines and send out letters and say, hey, I'd like to get a press pass. Could I take pictures, and could you send me something? I got a brand new camera for my birthday and all this stuff. Well, I wanted to take pictures, didn't know how to do it. My brother Ken, who had got out of the Air Force and he was hanging out in Houston with us, he had actually called the promoter Paul Bosch at his office and asked him, I was 12 at this time, asked him if he would just meet with me and give me a chance to take pictures at ringside for this magazine. And Ken picked me up from school one day and took me downtown. I was so nervous to finally meet Paul Bosch. You know, we had been going to the matches since we got there. Tickets were like $3. Ringside was $5 back then. I mean, it was incredible. So my mom liked the night out. We had been going, but you know, we're kids. And Ken brought me down to the office. I showed Paul this press pass I had, kept in my wallet, and he talked to me. And in that week, that Friday night was supposed to be a match with Wahoo McDaniel versus Jack Briscoe for the number one contenders for Dory Funk Jr.'s NWA Championship, the World Championship. And I took the pictures. They came out great. They got published, and I continued doing that for a while. And that was my foot in the door. Paul used some of my pictures in the program, and from there, there was another guy around Houston at that time, just a couple years older than me, named Gino Hernandez. And Gino had made it known, he's kind of a cocky guy back then. We knew each other in passing, but eventually he started being a second who would take the jackets back, and progressed on from there, and eventually became a wrestler. When he started working, I said to Paul, called him one day and told him if there was ever a chance to be a second or whatever needed, I'd love to take that job. And from being a photographer, it became now being a second, and I refereed a couple spot shows they had, and then I became Paul's assistant at ringside, and went on from there. But yeah, same thing Cornette did. He just kept taking pictures and being around the guys, and had that passion, love for the business, and he still does. And that was how it worked back then. If you wanted it bad enough, you were going to find a way to get in. I mean, that was the avenue, that was the route you took.
That is awesome. You were able to live your dream the last 40 years and be able to do basically what you wanted to do in life. That is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think everybody should be able to do that. I really do.
Definitely. I've been kind of trying to do that myself with, of course, with the radio show, and then with wrestling. I've been partnering up with NWF, Roger Ruffin. We done a couple shows, and we've done some stuff with Heartland Wrestling with Cody Hawk, and we did Legends of the Squared Circle, and we've been getting them booked at Bogart's in Cincinnati, and it's been going phenomenal. Unfortunately, with the corona, everything's shut down.
Everything has just been thrown for a loop with this thing.
So what was it like training under Bubba, a.k.a. the Iron Sheik?
Well, here's the thing. I was working in the office during the summer, and I always brought workout gear because that's what a good wrestler always does, and you just never know. And Paul knew I wanted to wrestle, but of course, I'm a $160 at best, not a big guy at all. And there was a guy, a football player, who showed up at the office one day and wanted to learn how to wrestle, and talked to Paul back in the office. And the next Friday, I remember Gary Hart, who always would come in on Friday mornings flying from Dallas, or driving with somebody. He usually flew, though. And go over the matches with Paul. But this Friday he came in with the Iron Sheik. And shortly after that, this guy showed up again, the football player. And Paul came out and said, would you take these gentlemen over to the Coliseum? And he looked at me and says, and if you want to work out with them, you can too. And I went, oh my gosh, here's my chance. So we went to the Coliseum. And we go into the dressing rooms, and at that time I was allowed in there occasionally, but I didn't stay too long, didn't want to wear out my welcome, and didn't look around. But now we're in the Sam Houston Coliseum dressing room, and it's just a big room with a couple mirrors on the wall, and not as hardly as impressive as you would think. But I'm thinking, here we go. Cosgrove is going to wear his pointy boots and trunks, and we're going to go out there and learn how to work. He puts on his amateur boots, amateur wrestling shoes, and amateur singlet. And we go out to the ring, and he has us do squats and push-ups first to warm up. Then he's going to show us how to lock up. And he says, do it strong. Put your left hand here, your right hand there. And when I went to lock up with him, I slapped him in the ear. Ooh. And I went, oh, yeah, because he says, oh. And he looked down, and then he says, I did not say, and he slapped me in the ear, and I went, oh, boy, this is going to be a long afternoon. But anyway, we got the lockups, and then he said, okay, now I'm going to get down on all fours, and I want you to turn me over. So I think this was just pretty much to see if this guy really wanted to do this, and that was what they did back then. They'd stretch the guy a little bit, see if he really wanted to do it or not. But he was, of course, going to pick on me first, and I went to turn him over, and the Sheik's like 260 or 230, 240, whatever it was back then. Great shape. And couldn't do it. And then finally he said, okay, now I do you. And I told the story before. To this day, he got down and put me in something where he's pulling my neck back or hurt me, and I said, okay. He goes, what? Scream louder, scream louder. I said, okay. And then he just kind of pushed me aside. Then he did the same thing to the football player, and he had us wrestle around for a little bit, trying to do amateur stuff, which I didn't know any amateur wrestling at all. And we did that, I think, one more time, two more times. Sheik was there not there in the territory much longer, but we worked out maybe a month, 2 months, until he figured out the football player wasn't coming back, and I was a skinny little kid and didn't have any use for her, but little did they know I wasn't going to give up. So that was an interesting experience, and Cosner always remembered that too. And so through the years, I would meet up at the in various territories. He's rookie, always the rookie. And I thought, that was kind of cool. So
that is cool.
it was the way in, and once again, back then, there weren't a whole lot of wrestling schools. Once the Sheik left the territory, I did go down to Nick Kozak and Joe Mercer's Wrecker Service, where they had a ring set up right by their pits, and there was like a 6-foot drop next to the ring. And myself and some other guys from Houston who I knew nothing about outlaw wrestling or independent wrestling back then, but a couple of guys had an outlaw. They called them outlaws back then. They had an outlaw organization, and they would come down and train down there. And also a guy by the name of King Parsons would drive his dump truck straight from work to Nick and Joe's Wrecker Service and get in the ring with us. So that was the way you learned the business back then. You found a way in, and I don't know of two people who did it the same way. And you did the best you could. They got to know you. They got to see if they could trust you, because they didn't just tell you everything the first day or the second day. And you might have had an idea, but nobody said anything until it was actually time to say anything. And I don't know that even happened. I mean, it's pretty much, we went through the first match, but times have changed, man, that's for sure.
You mentioned about being a little guy. I mean, when people think of you, though, they think of the jacked Bodydonna Heavenly Bodies. So, how'd you transition into being huge?
Well, I wasn't. Seriously, I don't. If you look in comparison, I'm not that huge. Not in the business I was in. But I worked out with Mark Lewin too when I was working in the office, and Mark actually lived 10 minutes from where I lived, and he was staying in Houston. You're familiar with Maniac Mark Lewin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Purple Haze, and Mark lived at this time off Telephone Road in Houston, and that's code word for the hood in Houston. And he lived in an apartment with his father, his wife, and 2 kids. A 2-bedroom apartment. And I'm looking at this guy, huge star everywhere in the world. I've known about Mark, but now he's working one town a night, Houston, Texas, with Gary Hart as a booker, Paul Bosch as promoter, and Mark and I are going to the gym, and we're going. I found this out. We were going to the same gym originally, and I'm in there working out, and I see Mark working out, and he had recognized me from the matches, and I just went over to say hello. I said, "Hey, you want to work out with me?" I said, "Oh, that's great. I'd love to." And we just went from there. He says, "Can you pick me up?" So then later on, I found out, he had one car, and he wanted to leave it for his wife, Taruko, and his dad, Sid. This way he had somebody now taking him to the gym, which is what he really wanted. And what I wanted was to work out with somebody who knew how to work out. I was trying to get big, and that was a big process. And through the years, there've been spurts where I wasn't going to the gym like I should. I wasn't training like I should, but these days you must. These days, if you want to look special, or if you want to be special, you have to look special. You have to look like a star. And so that was part of the process. I mean, I worked out, and especially in the beginning, and did what I had to do.
You've worked all around the world. How did you end up in Smoky Mountain in Tennessee?
I was actually working in the Memphis area at the time, and Jim Cornette called me. I was in Nashville and asked me if I would be interested in coming in, forming a team with Stan Lane, because he had just left WCW, and the original plan was to bring the Midnight Rock and Roll Express angle to Smoky Mountain, but Bobby had just signed another contract. Bobby had kids. Bobby had obligations, so Jim called to see if I would be interested. And I had been in Memphis for about a year by that time, I think. And so Knoxville wasn't that far from Nashville. It wasn't a big move. And I thought, yeah, that's a great idea. Just the opportunity to be involved with Jim Cornette and Stan Lane, who had just come off TBS, who had just been involved with rock and roll, and getting the opportunity to be featured, a featured angle on the card. So that's how that happened. Jim was looking for a partner for Stan, and I was where he needed me to be.
If it wouldn't have been during one of the times of wrestling depression, do you feel that Smoky Mountain would be a company still today?
Yeah. See, that's hard to say, because it was during that time where the business was changing. It was during the takeover period of all the territories, and the landscape was changing every day, minute by minute. So that's really hard to say. I do believe Knoxville and East Tennessee, for that matter, is a special place in the sense that people here still love professional wrestling, and they still love their wrestling with an R. Mm-hmm. And that's great, because those are passionate fans. Those are the fans you want cheering, booing, getting excited and feeling it, and having that passion. So it's really hard to say, because Jim was doing it as a one-man band, so to speak. He had Brian Hildebrand helping him, and Casey, I can't remember Casey's last name right now, but he had a couple guys who he counted on for help, but that meant you would have to, still doing it the old school way, hanging posters up and making sure nobody tore it down, and sometimes you go to these Kentucky towns or West Virginia towns who had outlaws running, and you'd put up posters all day long, only to come back the next day and 95% of them were taken down. So that was a little disheartening, I think. He didn't have a staff to go out and do the things that needed to be done, or take care of the things that really needed to be done. It was pretty much Jim and Brian Hildebrand taking care of that. So in 2020, it would be great, but so much has been changed and steamrolled over that I don't know if it would be a profitable venture, even going through there. We didn't have major stars, but what we had was the people who go out. Well, I take that back. Rock and Roll and Stan and Jim had just come off a major angle, so bite my tongue on that. But we had a support cast from top to bottom of guys who loved the business, had passion for the business, would do anything to stay in the business, and that was, I think, what held everything together, because you still have that love of, it didn't matter if you had to drive 4 hours for the 15 minutes you got in the ring. That meant what you were doing, what you're living for.
Well, I mean, you had all those future Hall of Famers, or should be Hall of Famers, because, I mean, obviously some of them, because of politics, won't ever be a Hall of Famer, but, I mean, Jericho and Lance Storm, Glen Jacobs, I mean, you guys had such talent down there.
Had a lot of talent, a lot of young talent, too. But, again, the way things were going, the business always needs fresh talent. Always, always, always. It's the lifeblood of any business, I think, obviously. But wrestling especially. And Vince, or whoever was going to get that cable spot, was going to snatch somebody up as soon as they got hot. It'll be that way forever, because somebody's going to always want that special guy, that star. And if you look around, some of the people running these internet shows, they may not be the best, and all of a sudden a glimmer of hope will come on, and you'll see this guy and say, oh, what's he doing here? Well, what he's doing there is getting an opportunity to show what he's got, and knowing that somebody will be flipping around and maybe catch him, or somebody will catch him and tell somebody else about him in the business. And that's how it's always worked, word of mouth and relationships. Smoky Mountain had a lot of talent, and that talent went elsewhere when they were offered. It wasn't, again, the business at that time wasn't profitable enough to keep it going. So if you're not making any money and you're doing it for fun, then you better have a lot of money. The best way to become a millionaire, right? Is start out as a billionaire and buy a wrestling company.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, that does seem to be the case.
Yeah.
So, you've had at least 3 major tag team partners with the Smoky Mountain and WWE, or WWF at the time. How would you compare and contrast them?
Well, Stan Lane was an easygoing, entertaining guy, fun to be around. Never had a harsh word. I mean, that was great, because he knew what he was doing. He had been with Jim for years, and so now I'm climbing on board. I had known Jim for years, but now I'm in the position of listening to him and hearing what he's got laid out. And he was meticulous in his finishes and knew where he was going, had an idea. And it was a lot of fun. When Stan decided to leave, because just, again, circumstances of the business weren't working for him anymore. So when he wanted to leave, we were kind of stuck. And Kevin Sullivan suggested Jimmy Del Rey, at that time Jimmy Backlund. And I had met Jimmy a couple times through the years. Nice enough guy, but I didn't really know him a whole lot. And when he came in, we talked, and we went out a couple times together and just found out that we're 2 different people. So everything he did in the ring was fantastic. I had no problems, no issues at all. Working with him in the ring and doing what we needed to do, but the contrast was, once we got done, we were done, and he went his way, I went mine. So that was just, I'm still not a big people person, and I'm kind of a loner, but if we click, we click. And Stan and I clicked because we respected each other's space. We knew this is your thing, that's my thing. Do you want to congregate and make it work together? Great. If not, no, you do your thing, then I don't do mine. Same thing with Jimmy. He was. He had his own idea how to have a good time, and I had mine. So that was the contrast between those guys. And Chris Candido was a fantastic guy, great guy, who loved the business. He's indicative of a lot of people get in the business and get sucked into other things or let things suck him in, and eventually you get lost or it loses you. And the business can be a fickle thing. It can be the greatest business in the world. It can be the most horrible business in the world. It's heartbreaking sometimes. And I think Chris experienced the good and the bad, and a lot of times the ugly. But I love Chris. Chris was one of those guys, again, who would do anything for professional wrestling. And but the Body Donna gimmick was horrendous. It stunk on ice, and we both knew it. And we were trying our best. I was trying my best, not to say anything to rock the boat. And later on, and even then, I knew you have to rock the boat. You can't be happy, just content, satisfied. And the squeaky wheel gets grease. And I just was trying not to make any noise, so.
Whose idea was it for you to transition into being a trainer?
Well, that came along the time when WWF wanted to have their own system. WCW had the power plant, and Vince was thinking about the future. How would we find talent? Where would we get talent? Because it used to be you would get it from the territories. That's how it started, and then the territories were no more. So he knew that WCW's power plant had turned out some guys, or it was it was a functioning training facility, and he was looking to do the same thing. And one time, Bruce was in Houston. I was in Houston at the same time. And Tiger Conway Jr. called me and asked me if I wanted to go down and roll around with some of the guys in town here. Tug Taylor had a ring set up on the north side of town, and I met Tiger down there, met some of the guys, and just was working out with them. And I saw somebody do a headlock takeover and just ram this guy's head in the mat. And I said, "Oh my God, are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah." Well, he just ran this guy's head almost like a pile driver. And I said, "Let me show you another way to do it. There's not just one way to do this business. There's your way, there's my way, but the right way, the only way, does not exist. But this way I'm going to show these guys is safer and it won't hurt so much." And eventually, after I'd been working for a little bit in WWF, Bruce mentioned to Vince that I had trained some guys in Houston. And Vince called me in the office, offered me the gig, and I said, "Well, but of course." I was 35, 36 at that time, I think. And, the business again, I'd been in WWE since 93, and it was not, I was ready for a change. I lost two partners, and I was kind of floating there, and I was ready for something else to happen.
So that was the start of the WWE studio?
Yeah, that was at 120 Hamilton.
Nice.
In Sanford, yeah.
And the way I understand it, it was a lot different than the Performance Center is today.
Well, yeah, we were actually, in fact, the last time I was in the studio, it was completely changed from when we were there. It was a warehouse, and you came through the entrance, the lobby of the TV studio, and then you go through another hallway, and then you walk into this big warehouse. And all the studios were, literally just on the other side of this warehouse, and the walls were not that thick. In fact, they were very thin, and they hated us because they had set up a ring in this warehouse along with boxes. There was boxes and deliveries being done, and it was a functioning warehouse, and in the middle of it, we had a ring set up with the barricades, and it was hot in the winter, cold in the summer, and we made a lot of noise all day long. We'd go train at the gym, at the office, and have lunch, and then come over to the studio by noon or 1 o'clock and start bumping until about 6. And finally, they would have to come out and ask us to stop, because they were stopping down and they had to get their work done. But it was fine for us. It was fine for me because I'm used to, that's a wrestling gym. It was a place to train, and I got it. I appreciate it and almost. I certainly embraced it because I always thought, the old saying, if you want a rainbow, you got to stand a little rain. If you want success, you got to go through some rigors and a little bit of obstacles. And this don't make it so comfortable, and don't make it so nice, because you'll appreciate it more when it is comfortable and nice. And don't ever get comfortable, and don't get too nice with it, because once you're not hungry anymore, you don't appreciate it as much. So that's the way I looked at the warehouse. I thought it was a great idea, a great atmosphere. Didn't have all the amenities that they have today, but once again, that came with change, and I think that's a good thing. And there's some things that could be better, in my opinion.
The way I understand it, you started off with a couple of pretty good students.
Yeah, they started. Mark Henry was just finishing up the Olympics, and that was the one of the major projects that Vince wanted to take care of and have him trained the WWF way at that time, and just get him in there and see what his attitude is, see how he feels. And they had another guy who was on the majority of bodybuilding magazines back then, named Occam Albrecht. And then, of course, Dwayne Johnson, he had been in Memphis for a little bit, getting some seasoning, but they wanted to use him in Survivor Series, so they wanted him back here and keep him fresh and train him and get his timing, feel him out back here. So they put him with us, and so we started out with 3 guys, and we trained every day and hung out and would have dinner and go to the movies, and it was it was really cool. And it's even cooler now to watch, of course, Mark and The Rock, but Occam was a good guy, great guy. He just never clicked with wrestling, and it was a shock to him, I think, just the lifestyle and the people in it, and not just a different breedy cat than he was used to, I think. But the cool thing is, with Rock, he was always that smartass, but a funny smartass. One of those guys, who you enjoyed hearing his quips and his stuff. He was that kind of guy. But to see him now, and the last time I saw him in person, God, a few years ago at whatever WrestleMania it was, and he was still the same guy. And every indication, every interview, every story that's recounted about people meeting him, that he is this down-to-earth person who knows how to connect with people, and he's always been that guy. And that's the cool thing, because a lot of people who've reached that level of success or breathe that rarefied air don't stay the same. In fact, it changes them. Whatever it is, it changes them. But I've talked to quite a few people who have actually met him and have that conversation with him. He makes you feel like you're the only one in the world at that time. And I'm really glad to hear that, because he was a good guy then, and I'm glad to hear he's a good guy now.
That is really cool to hear. That someone like that who has achieved such high levels of success is still a down to earth person.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice, and he realizes that. He realizes he's been through it, where I think he's come across people that he admired and thought a lot of, and I don't know if he's been disappointed, but I know that you can mold yourself from your experiences, and Dwayne's had some experiences in life, not always great, but he learned from them, and I'm certainly sure that's what molded him into who he is today.
So switching over to JPWA, Jacobs Prichard Wrestling Academy, when did it start and what inspired it to start?
Well, it started in January of 2019, and Glen Jacobs and I were having lunch during his campaign, and I mentioned I was doing a seminar somewhere, and the next day he called me and says, hey, you know what I was thinking? Why don't we open up a wrestling school here? You're here, I'm here, I think we could make it work. And I said, man, I've tried it before. It's a wrestling school. I'm not sure, especially here in East Tennessee, I don't feel it. I've done it before here, and it just didn't work. And then I thought about it. And with his name and my name, why not? Why not give it a shot? We weren't sure. He was working hard on the campaign for Knox County mayor, and weren't sure how that was going to turn out, but it won. But even before he won, I decided, yeah, we're going to do this. Well, I'll make it work. But once he won, I understood that's going to come first, and I'll do the wrestling school. And he showed up. He's come by and seen the guys, talked to the guys. But he has to understand he's got a lot on his plate. So we did it. We started January 2019. And once again, it started with 4 people. 2 people who had never watched wrestling before, but they saw it in the newspaper and thought it'd be cool to try. And the other 2 were wrestling fans. And one had been wrestling since she was 14 years old. She was now 16 starting with us. And that was Kenzie Page. She's been on AEW now a couple times. So the other was Dylan McQueen, who he's been wrestling around here for a while, since he started with us. And that's really how it came about. Just Glenn saying, why don't we do it? And I thought, no. And then I thought, yep, we can. So, we started January 2019, and in March 2020, the world ended as we know it. Because we were getting momentum going, but we had to wait a couple months.
And the way I understand it, you don't just focus on the in-ring work, you focus on the promos and the character development as well?
Yeah, the character development and promos / interviews are probably as important, if not more important, than what you do in the ring. What we do in the ring is really a small percentage of what this business is. If you can't connect to the audience, if you can't get anyone to care about you, love you or hate you, then you're not doing it the right way. You're not doing it. You need to have a connection. You need to have the audience care about you. The worst thing you have is where no one cares either way. It's kind of like, let's go to the concession stand. So, I emphasize that. And I ask people all the time, who are you? What are you presenting? How are you authentic? Do you believe it? And why should I believe what you believe? There's got to be an element of realism to it. There's got to be an element of being of authenticity, of being this guy. You can't just play a part because people will see through it. And I don't want to go to to a show and see my next door neighbor. I want to go and see somebody special. I want to go see somebody who is a star, who believes they're a star, and presents themselves like they are stars. And this is a unique business with unique people. The problem is these days everybody can go out on YouTube or any social media platform and become a star for 15 minutes or longer. But I think I read an article not too long ago about the movie star or the star quality has really gone away because of all the social media platforms, because of all the things available for people to do and showcase, and they become this sensation for whatever reason. But I still want to see somebody who can do something I can't. And I want to see somebody who makes it look good. And I want to see somebody who puts passion into what they're doing. And so do wrestling fans. So we talk about that. And we talk about promos. We talk about connecting. We talk about realism. We talk about, yes, turn the volume up. And if you're not that interesting, find something. Read a book. Listen to promos. Listen to interviews. Listen to other people. People watch. Go take your dog for a walk in the park and eavesdrop on people. You can hear some really interesting conversations. You can see some really interesting people. So you have all these avenues. Listening to the radio, listening to music, watching movies, watching YouTube. Just hearing about obscure things that nobody else knows about. And it makes you sound a little mysterious when you don't tell everybody all the details of your life. And that's kind of how the mystique was built years ago. You had a star and you had your bio, whatever it may be. The Infernos, I was talking about earlier, they were from Europe. One Inferno grew up with a leg shorter than the other, so he had to wear an orthopedic boot. And they became the best friends, and nobody wanted to wrestle them, so they had to put the mask on. I mean, all this stuff, man. The two guys are from Tennessee. They got an idea. Put the boot on, tap it twice. Here we go. We'll kick the guy. All these stories, but it was plausible. It was real. It was authentic. Although what they were doing was they were thinking shoot, but they were working. And that's what we tell everybody. Think, shoot, but work. When you're talking, when you're walking, when you go to the building, when you step in, you become. You have to transform. You can't be the average guy they see every day at work. You've got to be a star. You've got to be something special. You've got to have some mystery to you. Not everybody may think they want to know all these little secrets and elements about you. But when you tell everybody all these things about you, you become one of them. Exactly. And you don't want to be one of them. You're special. You're a different breed. They're in the audience. And if you dress and look and talk like everybody in the audience, pretty soon you're going to be back in the audience. So that's what we teach people, and that's what we talk about, why promos are so special. Why did anybody want to listen to Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, Dude Love, Mankind? Why did anybody want to listen to The Undertaker? Or why did anybody want to listen to The Rock? Because he captivated you. It's what he said, how he said it. Everything he did meant something. It was calculated. It was thought of. Maybe it was rehearsed, but it didn't come across that way. It came across as authentic, spontaneous, his delivery, his mannerisms. All these things that you may not think about, I make you think about. And that's what we do.
That is awesome, because you're right. I mean, a lot of times people just think of the basics, but there is a lot more to wrestling, the psychology of it, the details into it. And, yeah, I mean, it sounds like your school really brings that out of your students.
Details are everything. It's the little things that add up to the big things. And if you skip the little things, you're missing the point, and you're missing the boat.
Before we let you go, where on social media, where on the web, where can they learn more about your school?
Well, we are on jpwrestlingacademy.com. We have an email. It's jpwrestlingacademy@gmail.com. I am on Twitter at Dr. Tom Prichard. We also have JPWA on Twitter. I'm not sure the Twitter handle right now, but we're on Facebook too. If you go to Jacobs Prichard Wrestling Academy. And also, I have a book out. I've had a book out for the last couple of years. If I can mention this, it's called A Complete One-Year Training Curriculum and Guide for Beginners and Seasoned Pros. It's a pro wrestling curriculum, advice, suggestions, and stories to help the aspiring pro get to the next level. And you can find that on Amazon.com. Just type in Dr. Tom Prichard book. So, yeah, JPWA is finishing up this class. Our next class begins August 31st and goes through November 20th. All the information is on the jpwrestlingacademy.com website. And hope to hear from anybody who wants to wrestle.
Sounds great. Are there any spots still left with that?
Oh, yes. For the one coming up the 31st, there are. We're having a camp this weekend. Les Thatcher and I, August 8th and 9th, it sold out in 2 weeks. So that was pretty good. But this camp we have coming up, the 12-week course, still has spots available.
And the way I understand it, not currently, but at times there are fantasy camps?
Yes. And I've had people ask me about that, for the last 4 weeks. We don't have the capability right now to do a fantasy camp, just with everything going on.
Definitely. Yeah, because I was going to say, as much as that's still the dream at age 40 to do it, I would probably be more of a fantasy camper as opposed to a real student.
Well, we do that. Yeah, we do a one-day fantasy camp, and people have enjoyed it. We've done 3, I think, so far, and it's just one of those things that right now with everything going on, we don't want to bring too many people in for the one-day thing. The way we're doing the camp this weekend, we're having all the checks, we're having the face mask, and taking all the precautions. And these are for seasoned pros, so it's going to be a different setup. The fantasy camp again should be later on this year if we have one, if we're available, if we're able to. But you're right. A lot of people think it's passed me by, but I still like to get in there, maybe jump off the top rope on a crash pad, or just hit the rope, see what they really like. So, and that's the idea behind our fantasy camp. But we'll always have a notice and a time and a place and how to do it on our website. And again, it's jpwrestlingacademy.com.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. We greatly appreciate having you on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.